So I'll never forget the the run day that I had that where everything's like, it just seemed like I couldn't get people to not say yes. And I'd never had that up to that point. So I was like, okay, so something was different today. So when I finished up that run day, I went back and went through all of my appointments, and I carried this run notebook with me for several months, where if I would have a really hard day in the field, I would go through and figure out, how many people did I see this day, the ones that I missed, what was the objections I was getting, the ones that I closed, what did I do that I thought was different in this one. So I used to write all that stuff down so that I could go home every night and study what I was screwing up in my in-home stuff. Again, if I had a day where I sat 1 out of 10 appointments, then I'm like, okay, well, let me try to see if I can go back in time and remember, how did these appointments go booking over the phone? Was I paying attention when I was booking them? Did they give me some weird stuff that I just kind of let slip by and was just trying to get appointments on the board? But carrying that little run notebook with me was huge, because it allowed me to pinpoint very specific mistakes. When I would miss in a house, I would call and say, hey, this is how the appointment went. Here's what I said, in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. This is how I presented numbers. Would you have done anything different? And this was conversations that I was having, a lot of them with Zach at the time, because he was out selling at the highest level that you can sell at within the company. And a lot of it came from those evening reflections and reading through that stuff. But I remember that specific day where I had, I think it was 7 or 8 families in, one single day that I was able to help. And my aha moment was, first of all, being myself in appointments instead of trying to like manufacture a fake personality was a really, really big thing for me. I was trying to behave like Dom Rogers or Eric Schmidt or Zach T or Matt Smith, all these people that I'm not. I was trying to like use the exact verbiage that those people would use. And I figured out, if I just went in there and set up structure, asked a handful of good questions, and was just speaking like I would normally speak, instead of trying to, pretend like I was some high level business professional in a suit inside this, trailer house, which would be weird for everybody. I stopped doing that stuff and just started having conversations with people like they were my own family. That was one of the biggest game changers for me, especially in face-to-face sales, is if this was my parents, how would I have this conversation? What kind of questions would I ask? Everybody wants to know, like, hey, what questions do you ask to, get out a really good why? Well, that should be easy as you run more repetitions, especially if you're like, hey, what if this was like my parents, grandparents, aunt, uncle? If I was speaking to me and my wife, what kind of questions do I need to ask to figure out what is going to be the situation if someone passes away? I think that was maybe the biggest. It's hard to say one single biggest thing, because there's a bunch of stuff that, I had to adjust, but just having a normal conversation with people and stop trying to be so salesy and professional. I'm not saying be unprofessional. That's probably not good advice, but it's okay to like be relaxed. These people don't want you to come in a 3-piece with your $800 shoes on. That is not the kind of clientele that we see almost ever. So if you can just go in and have a conversation with them like they're your family members, or they're just middle income Americans like we are. They're the exact same type of people, no matter where you're at in the country. I've basically ran in like 40 states, and out of all of the states that I've ran business in, everybody's just looking for someone that actually cares about them, and that's going to sit there and ask them maybe some challenging questions that nobody else would ask. Well, I don't like to talk about this stuff. Well, like, dude, let's just talk about it today and we never have to bring it up again. That was a huge hurdle that I couldn't figure out. Like, what do you mean you don't want to talk about it? You guys invited me over to the house. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just talk about this right now, make a plan, get a solution in place? Then you guys never have to talk about it because it's done. And then when something bad does happen, you'll know you can call me because I've already seen you in person. That's the kind of stuff that I think was a big game changer for me.
When you go to somebody's home, like what do you do?
Man, I think there's just, a handful of points that you need to hit in every single house. Definitely establishing control, whether that's like, passively establishing control. Like, you don't have to like walk in there with an iron fist and like, slam your cane down and just say, hey, everybody listen to me. Right. It's just kind of guiding everybody like, hey, are we going to have the appointment here? Do you want me to sit on the couch? Are we going to go to the table? Right. So you're talking about in-home, right? Like in the house, appointment. Yeah. Okay. Grab your license out, man, and just immediately like get into what you want your policy to do for you. You know what I'm saying? Because if they're going to give me a vague answer, like I want to combat that up front. I want to see what's going on right now, so I don't waste a lot of time on the back end. We've all been in that position where we don't do a super good job of that up front, and then we just wasted an hour, right? Instead of addressing that up front and making them reiterate to you like, hey man, this is why you're here. This is what I'm looking for. And in doing that, it also does justify, you know, you, Elvis, like why you're in my house and why we're having the conversation that we're having too. So through that conversation, it builds a little bit of trust, you know, so what they want the policy to do, who it's protecting. That's really all your leverage in the world right there, is who the policy is for, you know, and what would happen financially without something like this. So you can kind of just exhaust all of the, I got to think about it, right? And get it all up front. And then just transition to the application, man. Usually show 3 prices, and instead of showing prices, you got to have a specific purpose attached to each face value increment that you're showing, like the value of the policies in the face value and how that money is going to be distributed once the beneficiary receives it, to alleviate, you know, their top 3 main concerns, right? So the highest price is always going to have 3. It's going to address 3 primary concerns, or alleviate 3 primary concerns for the beneficiary once they receive that money. The middle price is going to alleviate 2 primary concerns, and then the bottom price is going to eliminate like the main concern, and then attach the price after that. But I think, man, that's as simple as it gets. I don't like to get it too complicated. You know what I mean? Complicated or confused people don't usually buy.
When I'm in the home, I'm actually going into client home. First, I'm assuming the sale. Second, I'm not giving them no quotes. Okay. And third, I'm very confident with what I'm saying. And fourth, I'm challenging my client every single time. Long story short, I had one of my clients. Okay. I have a checkbook right in my bag, right? I had one of my clients who was 63, something like that. Happened about 2 weeks ago, right? And the client was like, well, I'm paying like $30 a month for $100,000. And I just got this about a couple of weeks ago. I told him, you have accidental. And he was like, well, no, I don't. I have regular coverage. I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what, because he didn't want to share his policy with me. Obviously, we all know $30 for 100,000 for a 63 years old is definitely an accidental, right? Pulled up my checkbook and I told him, if it's not an accidental, I'm writing you a $500 check right now. He was like, seriously? I'm like, yep, you show me that policy. If it's not accidental, I'm writing you a $500 check. And the guy went and grabbed the policy, and we looked at him like, you see, it's accidental. So I guess we're moving forward with mine now then, right? And we moved forward on my policy. So in my policy was 140 something bucks a month. The certain thing is, you know, being able to challenge your clients in certain ways without having to, you know, don't worry about, you know, hurting the client feeling, as long as you're being truthful, right? You know, like one of the things I do is, you know, if the client tells me, for example, you know how many times I get the client be like, yeah, I want to think about this. I'm like, hey, Mr. Client, you've been thinking about this for 63 years. And right now you have a wife, right, who actually on Social Security making $1,000 a month. You're making $5,000 a month, correct? So $5,000 a month, you can afford the mortgage payment. She can't. Your mortgage payment is $1,200. So let me ask you a question. Please be honest with me, Mr. Client. How much do you love your wife? And in that question right there, I mean, that's when like, oh, I love my wife more than anything in the world. I'm like, okay. Do you love her enough to make sure that she's protected? I'm like, well, she get my retirement. I'm like, no, she don't. We both know that's an excuse for you not to get this policy, isn't it? So with all due respect, I'm sharing this out of love. And I really want love for you to get a policy to protect your wife, just like I have one for me, just like what, you know, most normal people do. So go grab your checkbook and let's get this started for you. So it's just being very direct, challenge your client. Don't be afraid to hurt their feelings, even if it's like, just say the truth.
Does everybody know what you do? So who you are, like you as an individual, you're the brand. Number 2, what you do. Number 3, how great you are at what you do. Write that down. Neil Foster, how great you are at what you do. Does everybody know how great you are, man? Do they know? They don't know. That's a problem. That's a massive problem. So who you are, what you do, how great you are at what you do. And number 4, where you're at. How did they get access to you? How do they find you? How do they initiate a conversation? All right, now everybody write this down. Marketing. Okay, we're going to call it social media, lead generation, branding, marketing. We're just going to write down a simple word, marketing. Marketing. Okay. If you want to make marketing become a sell or a recruit, you're going to have a conversation. Right? Would you guys agree? Look, dude, in marketing, people are like, oh, dude, I'm going to make a funnel and it's going to make a ton of money. No, you're not, dude. No, you're not. If people don't know who you are, they're not going to buy off your funnel. Okay. You're going to have a conversation with somebody. So write this down. CTA. CTA is the call to action. How do you want people to contact you?